Another one. Here we go. Are you ready? Let's see where they're at. In chapter 15, Nick closed his eyes and tried to concentrate on his breathing. The latest video Teddy had uploaded was playing before him. He did everything he could to try and relax and not be pissed. Meanwhile, Teddy was on his cell phone screen, slandering him in the worst light possible. The video had come out 2 hours earlier, and since then, Nick had been bombarded with messages, almost everyone asking if he'd seen it yet. Nick ignored their messages and did everything he could to try and avoid the video. There was nothing that could be gained from watching it, so he didn't want to know. He expected to make it more than 2 hours. It appeared to be Teddy's tell-all and his attempt to grab the moral high ground. He explained all the pranks as being both in poor taste and greed. He pretended to be the innocent victim of a horrible roommate. Beyond the pranks, he claimed Nick to be smelly and a slob, a habit carried over from childhood. Nick had no idea what he was talking about and had always thought of himself as tidy. He sniffed himself just to confirm that he did not, in fact, stink. All of that seemed bad enough, but Nick didn't get mad until Teddy dragged his family into it. He claimed Nick's parents didn't raise him right, then went on a tangent about Daisy and Tom being cheaters. If that didn't tip Tom off as to what was going on with Daisy and Jason, nothing would. The worst part was he couldn't even confront Teddy about it. After storming out, he only came back one time, the day before, when he showed up with 2 other guys and a van. They brushed past Nick, cleaning out Teddy's room and loading all of his stuff. When Nick tried to interject, Teddy threatened that he needed to step back. "What about rent?" Nick asked as they were loading the last of his things. Teddy merely shrugged. "Not my problem." He then hopped into the van and pulled away. Now there came the video. Another slap. A confirmation of how Teddy was done with him. Jordan must have seen the video too because she texted asking if he needed her to come over. Nick thought he felt fine on his own, but told her yeah anyway. She showed up 20 minutes later. Nick opened the door for her, expecting a hello or how you holding up. Instead, Jordan stepped in close to him. Before he could ask what she was doing, she grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him in. His lips were on hers, and he closed his eyes. It felt good, soft, and warm. A chill of excitement ran through his body. Nick wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her in tighter. All thoughts of Teddy were gone. There was no drama, only her, only that kiss. They only separated when they heard someone else say, I knew that was going to happen eventually. Nick and Jordan parted to find Jason walking through the front yard. Daisy trailed a short ways behind him. Nick cleared his throat and did his best to act like he wasn't just making out with Jordan. She made a face that he could only assume meant she felt surprised as well. Hey, said Nick, look at you guys sneaking up out of nowhere. Just came to celebrate, said Daisy. Maybe take you two on the town? Celebrate? Asked Jordan. Did you hear the news? Asked Jason. My boy here made national television. Jordan turned to Nick expectantly. Technically, you did too, he said. It was a clip of me getting punched. Oh, said Jordan, her eyes going wide. That made national news? Why am I just hearing about this? Nick shrugged. A lot's been going on, I guess. So are we going or what? Asked Jason. I'm driving. I'm not really in the mood, said Nick. Daisy scoffed at him. Oh, come on. What could be that bad? Teddy made a reaction video to the one you guys are talking about, said Jordan. He was pretty unfair in his inside scoop of Nick. Nick threw his arms up. He straight up lied about half of it, and everyone's believing him. Ah, don't worry about that, said Jason. Nobody will remember in a week. True, and another reason to get out of the house, said Daisy. Clear your mind. Come out with us, please. Nick had no real desire, but looked at Jordan. He could see she wanted to. He decided, what could it hurt? Perhaps it would clear his mind. After a short pause, he said, Sure. Jason didn't wait for them to change their minds. He acted quick to turn around and head for his house, coming back a minute later with his car. Daisy claimed the front seat, so Nick and Jordan took the back. As they began driving, Jordan slipped her hand into Nick's. Nick looked down at this for a moment, then smiled. Her touch was something he rather liked. There's some other great news we want to celebrate, said Jason when the car began to move. What's that? Asked Nick. Daisy and I are going to take our relationship public. What? Demanded Nick. Are you out of your minds? He felt incredulous. Daisy was a married woman. What were they expecting would happen? And I bet Tom is going to approve? Asked Nick. Daisy's breaking up with him soon, said Jason. She's waiting for the right moment. Is that true? Nick asked. Daisy turned to glance at him for a moment, then fixed her gaze forward. Yeah, she said, her voice lacking confidence. This is going too far, said Nick. Jason shook his head. No way, bro. It hasn't gone far enough. When Tom's out of the picture, we can truly be happy. When Tom's out of the picture, Nick repeated. That's her husband. Ex-husband, Jason retorted. Did I miss something? Or are they not currently married? Asked Nick. Boys, please, Daisy cut in. I don't want to talk about this. Nick glared out the window. He could not believe how far the affair had gone. They kept barreling forward with no regard for the consequences. An odor struck his nostrils, and Nick winced. Outside his window, the scenery turned brown with the dirt and trash. He looked down as he saw a hollow-eyed woman sitting on the curb. Her hands were twitching as her head lolled from side to side. Nick hated this place, the rotting decay of Skid Row. He wished Jason would speed up so they could get through it faster. How's your channel doing? Jordan asked, leaning forward towards Daisy. Mark my words, said Jason, ignoring both Daisy and Jordan. Tom will be gone by the end of the month. You're making all the rules now? Asked Nick. Daisy put her hand over Jason. That's a lot of pressure. Jason turned his hand to hold hers and softened his voice. I know you'll do it. For me. Daisy smiled, though Nick could see her eyes were stressed. Nick wanted to point this out to Jason, to tell him to lay off and let things take their natural course. Unfortunately, he didn't know how, especially with Daisy sitting right there. He decided to talk to Jason sometime when they were alone, maybe show up at the house in the morning. "How long before you get your diamond play button?" Jordan asked. Daisy shrugged. "Who knows? Could be months, could be years. I never seem to know how fast my channel's going to grow. The sooner I get to 7 million subscribers, the better, though." Nick relaxed a little as they began to exit Skid Row. The smell of the air alone made him start to feel better. The buildings soon began to grow taller, and he knew they were getting closer to the heart of the city. The people were cleaner and seemed more alive. Jason found a spot next to a restaurant and parked. "This place has the best California-style pizza," he said as he shut the car off. "Pizza?" asked Daisy. "Their avocado sandwiches are pretty good too." This seemed to satisfy her as she hopped out of the car excitedly. Jason followed, leaving Jordan and Nick alone. "They're a disaster, aren't they?" Jordan whispered, even though they wouldn't have heard if she spoke normally. "Yes," Nick exclaimed. "It's like they don't care that Daisy's married." "To a cheater," said Jordan. "At this point, they both are." Jordan pursed her lips. "No kidding. She needs to get a divorce or something." "I know," said Nick, "and they need to slow this down until she does, or at least until she separates." There was a knock at the window. Nick jumped, only to find Jason on the other side. "Time to go celebrate with a happy couple," said Jordan. "Yup," Nick agreed, then opened his door and climbed out of the car. Inside the restaurant, Nick and Jordan sat on one side of the table while Jason and Daisy sat on the other. Nick could feel Jordan's body as she pressed against him. He wanted to sink into that, to feel more of her weight. The pizzas were small but good, coming on a thin crust. Nick didn't know how he felt about avocados as a topping, but apparently this place put it on everything. It wasn't all that bad, but he wouldn't try it again. It made him wonder, at what point is a pizza no longer a pizza? When they were done, Jason paid for their meal with his credit card. Nick threw some cash on the table just to make his own contribution, even though it wasn't necessary. A few people were standing outside, apparently waiting for them. A group of 3 girls came up first, asking for an autograph, pens in hand. A few others wanted pictures. The last person was a man with long hair and a dirty ball cap, on backwards. Where everyone else held cell phones, he had a professional camera. Nick recognized him as the paparazzi immediately. Jason took one look at the man as well, then grabbed Daisy by the waist and pulled her in for a kiss. Nick's mouth fell open. Their lips met, and the paparazzi began snapping photos. He even stepped sideways to get multiple angles. "Stop," Nick breathed, reaching out his hand as if to will them apart. Daisy pushed off Jason's chest as she realized what was going on. "Why did you do that?" she demanded. "What?" asked Jason. "Don't you love me?" The cameraman continued snapping pictures. Daisy took one look at him, then turned and began marching away. Jason followed first, then Nick and Jordan, and last, the cameraman. Jordan planted her feet and turned on him. "Seriously, dude, you need to leave us alone." The cameraman stuck his camera in her face and took a few shots. "Do you have any comment on the affair I just witnessed between Jason and Daisy?" "You're harassing us," Jordan replied. And paparazzi turned his camera on Nick. "Does her husband Tom know?" "You need to get a life," said Nick. He grabbed Jordan lightly by the elbow and began pulling her away. She held her ground for a moment before giving in. Is this what it was like when I wrote the article on Tom? She asked as they walked to catch the others. That was way less invasive, Nick tried to reassure, but he could still see the trouble in her expression. The paparazzi continued to snap photos from where he stood. He must have gotten the message because he didn't continue to follow. When he finished, he headed back to where he came from, presumably to send in the photos. You didn't have the right to do that, Daisy said as Nick and Jordan came up. Jason turned away from her, then turned back, saying, I don't understand what the big deal is. Everyone is going to see. Good. Daisy balled her fist. My husband's going to see. You said you were going to break it off with him, said Jason. I just saved you time. That wasn't your decision to make. Jason threw up his hands. We're together, Daisy. I get a say in this too. You are not part of my marriage, Jason, said Daisy, her voice quivering. Nick felt Jordan slip her hand into his, and they shared a look of concern. Nick ticked off the seconds in his head, counting down how long he thought it would take for the photos to begin spreading across social media. If the paparazzi guy was any good at his job, the photos were probably already sold and the first ones popping up. Or perhaps he would start a bidding war, or maybe post them on his own site. Let's just take a breath, okay? Jason was saying. This is all going to work out. Daisy plopped down on a bench. They had reached the beach, and the ocean expanded out in front of them. Seagulls squawked overhead as they searched for anyone willing to throw them a scrap of food. Were the situation not so tense, Nick would have taken off his shoes and buried his feet in the sand. There was a bike trail curved through the sand no more than 20 feet away. As a rollerblader went by, he called out, I love you, Jason. Jason lifted a hand to the guy without looking, his concentration fully on Daisy. How are you feeling? He asked. Do you need something to drink? It's pretty warm out. Daisy turned her chin away. You know exactly how I feel. Come on, Jason insisted. I would have never done that if I knew it would make you this upset. Daisy huffed. You're an idiot, Jason. Do you know that? Jason smiled. I've been told that a time or two. Nick felt Jordan move against him and pulled her in close. Neither of them spoke, in fear of interrupting the bickering couple. Can we try and salvage the rest of our day? Jason asked. All I want is to be with you. Daisy turned back and eyed him for a moment. Finally, she sighed. What am I going to do with you? Jason took this opportunity to kiss her. With no cameraman around, Daisy returned the kiss, and the two were soon embraced in passion. Nick and Jordan made a point to turn away and focus on the ocean. There were a few surfers out there, sitting on their boards, talking. They're a disaster, Jordan whispered. Nick could feel her body twitching with laughter, and it made him want to laugh too. Soon, he couldn't contain himself. His nerves and the absurdity of the situation were too much. His laughter spilled out, matching Jordan's as they doubled over onto each other. Nick could feel tears coming to his eyes. Jason and Daisy stopped kissing to see what was going on. They looked confused, yet smiled at the sight of such hearty laughter. Nick tried to speak, but couldn't get any words out over his racking stomach. The situation is so outrageous, Nick thought, that Jason and Daisy could go around with the attitude they had. It was like they cared about nothing except what they wanted, They had no forethought of consequences, and the whole thing had been orchestrated through him. His abs ached for relief as he tried to catch his breath. For a moment, he wondered if he had cracked and gone crazy. Jordan leaned on him as they came back around. She breathed hard, sounding as though she had just finished running. Jason and Daisy were still watching them, laughing as well, but confused as to why. "I think I need to walk," said Nick, when he had recovered enough to speak. Jordan took his hand and stood, yanking him along as she did so. "Come on," she said. Nick lurched forward and could hear Jason and Daisy getting up to follow. He wished they wouldn't. "Let's run away," Jordan whispered. This made Nick smile, because he knew she was thinking exactly like him. They could ditch all the drama and just be by themselves. "You first," he said, and she responded by falling into him. She hugged his arm and rested her head on his shoulder. He embraced it, concentrating on the spots their bodies made contact. He decided to pick her up, reach behind her legs, and scoop her around. She would enjoy the ride and reward him with a kiss. He was about to execute when he heard Daisy. "Tom?" This stopped him dead in his tracks. He turned around to see Daisy with her phone to her ear. "Calm down," she continued. "It's not what it looks like." Jason reached for the phone, and Daisy jumped away. "Please," she continued, tears beginning to spill from her eyes, smearing her makeup. "Let me talk to him," said Jason. "It's no one," Daisy went on, talking to the phone. She spun away, keeping Jason out of reach. "Baby," she pleaded. Jason finally overtook her and got the phone away. "She's busy," he said, then ended the call. The phone began ringing almost immediately. Jason declined, then shut the phone off. "Give me my phone, Jason," Daisy pleaded. "You're not thinking straight," he said. "That's not a good idea." Daisy held her trembling hand out expectantly, but Jason refused. "Let's keep walking," he said. Daisy snapped back. "Take me home." "Daisy, take me home right now, Jason." Jason turned to Nick for help, but Nick could only shrug. Daisy stormed off in the direction of the car. "Talk to me," said Jason, right on her heels. They were moving fast and were soon closer to the building than they were to Nick and Jordan. "Should we let them go?" asked Jordan. "We could Uber home," said Nick, "but I suppose someone should keep an eye on them." "Do we have to?" asked Jordan. Nick gave his best apologetic look and said, "Unfortunately." The arguing couple had moved far off, far enough that they could no longer hear Jason's pleading. "I suppose we should ward off any more paparazzi that might be waiting to ambush," Jordan conceded. "No need to make things worse than they already are." Daisy walked as fast as she could without running, and in turn, so did Jason. Nick and Jordan struggled to catch up, only doing so as the other couple reached the car. Daisy sat in the passenger side while Jason started the engine. Nick wondered if they would have left him and Jordan had they delayed any further. Regardless, they jumped in the back and fastened their seatbelts. Nick looked back and forth between an adamant Jason and a smoldering Daisy. He sank back in his seat and prepared for a very tense car ride. Ruh-roh. Somebody just got busted. We're at like 75%, 80%. It's going down.